Discover the sinister truth, 12 spine-chilling tales of haunted secrets revealed in full 4K. Sarah's heart raced as the eerie whisper of night crept into her quiet home. Like a living nightmare, her once cozy life had twisted into shadows and fear. She felt it, the eyes on her, the chilling sensation that someone or something lurked just beyond her front door. Her good-natured neighbor, Mr. Thompson, had fired off a haunting text, "Stay inside. You're being watched." She dismissed it. Exhaustion clouded her judgment, but now, as she stepped out after a long hospital shift, her instincts shrieked at her that something was wrong. The streets, usually buzzing with life, felt like a ghost town, and the moon was a sickly witness high in the sky, casting long, menacing shadows. She hugged her coat tight, fighting back the unease creeping in. The kids were asleep, their laughter now just an echo in her memory. As she turned the key in the lock, she heard it rustling outside, like the sound of leaves being disturbed in a secret dance. For a heart-stopping moment, a giggle floated through the air, innocent yet tainted with malice. The hair on her neck prickled. Were the kids dreaming, or was this something far more sinister? Days morphed into sleepless nights. Every moment felt haunted. Sarah noticed the oddities, figures darting in her peripheral, whispers of shadow man haunting her children's dreams. She shivered as the police laughed off her fears. Paranoia? Or was society turning a blind eye to something dark? The fear spread like wildfire in her gut. The breaking point came when she stumbled upon a small camera wedged between her garden gnomes. Blood pumped in her ears as reality crashed in. Someone watched her. They saw everything. Panic igniting inside, she wrestled her thoughts into a plan. That night, trembling but determined, she confronted Mr. Thompson, searching for answers, yet his charming smile twisted into something darker. "Just the neighborhood watch," he claimed, words twisting, dripping with something sinister. But the chill in her spine told her of deeper horrors, ancient whispers about shadows and rituals permeating from the woods that hugged their suburb. The thought alone sickened her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The dread thickened when, amidst her spiraling nightmare, she heard the giggles again. That unsettling sound filling the hallway, pulling her in. Gathering her courage, she flung the door open, revealing her children standing transfixed in the moonlit room. Their eyes shimmered with an unnatural gleam, locked onto something just outside the window. She stepped closer, panic slicing through her as realization dawned. The figure beyond the glass wasn't a stranger. It was someone she knew. The blood drained from her face as a chilling revelation gripped her. Sarah was no longer just fighting for peace, but for survival against the dark, hidden truths of her suburban facade. What had she really brought into her safe haven? And could it all be taken away in the blink of an eye? The figure outside the window moved like a wraith, its form twisting in the pale light. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she squinted, desperation clawing at her throat. Was it really him? She wanted to scream, to call out to her children, to pull them back from that hypnotic grasp of the supernatural. But instead, she stood frozen. The night was heavier than any blanket, each second stretching impossibly long. "Mommy?" whispered Lily, her voice ethereal, far removed from the world Sarah knew. She reached out, her small hand stretching toward the glass as if entranced. "No!" Sarah shouted, lunging forward. She shoved her kids aside and flung the window shut, slamming it shut harder than intended. The shadows outside jerked backwards, as if the movement electrified the air between them. The laughter swallowed by the night turned to desperate cries, echoing in her mind. Had that really been her husband? The cozy life they had built now felt like a fragile house of cards, ready to topple. That moment, the glow of the moon dimmed. An unnatural darkness crept into the room, coiling around them like smoke. She turned to her children, who now took a step back, faces pale and frozen with fear. "What did you see?" she demanded, voice trembling. "Daddy," her youngest, Ethan, murmured. "He's outside, he wants to play." "No." Panic surged within Sarah. "He's not your father anymore. You must listen." "But he's been gone for so long," Lily added, her voice breaking. "He just wants to come back home. He promised." Their innocence felt like chains, weighing her down. What had she done? The truth clawed at her insides, a bitter realization she'd been too afraid to contemplate. Something had taken root in her life, a hidden darkness wrapping its tendrils around the people she loved. The nursery, once decorated in bright colors and laughter, felt like a tomb. Every shadow held whispers, every creak of the house seemed to echo a warning. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled her children into the center of the room. They huddled together, but her mind raced, thoughts spiraling as she grasped for an escape. The whispers grew louder and sharper, merging with her pulse. "Mommy," Ethan said softly, "can we just go outside? Please?" "No. No. You don't understand," she shouted. It was now or never. She had to protect them. The very walls of her home felt alive, pulsing with malevolence. She thought of Mr. Thompson, the camera, the eyes watching her every move. The simple suburban life she desired was now clouded in danger. "Lock the doors." She shoved a chair under the doorknob, adrenaline pumping through her. The children watched her wide-eyed, confusion mingling with fear. Then the knocking began, rattling against the door, knocking that sent tremors through her skin. Low and insistent, it persisted, growing more frantic. "It's me. Let me in." A voice called from the other side, distorting into something sinister. It wasn't just any voice, it twisted and coiled as if wrapped around broken glass. "Stay back," she screamed, pushing the kids deeper into the shadows. A new reality shattered her thoughts. Who was knocking? Was that really her husband? Every instinct screamed for her to run, to escape this nightmare. Yet, the children remained, staring wide-eyed as they clung to the remnants of the love they once knew. The knocking continued, now accompanied by soft giggles, a chorus of malicious mirth that clawed at Sarah's sanity. She could see shapes darting beyond the windows, shadows that danced at the periphery. What unspeakable horrors had she unwittingly unleashed upon her family? As she pressed her back against the wall and surrounded herself with her children, the door shook violently. A shriek sliced through the night, the giggles turning hollow. What she thought she had shielded them from now bore down directly on her. What if this creature had not been summoned by happenstance, but by her very own blood? Gripped by dread, she wondered. If her husband was home, who, or what, had taken his place? The air thickened with tension, the sound of splintering wood echoed like thunder. Sarah braced for the worst, knowing deep down that the truth she feared was about to reveal itself. What would happen when the door finally gave way? And then, just as the door shattered, the darkness flooded in, leaving one burning question in its wake: was it too late for every last one of them? The door burst open with a resounding crash, wood splintering and flying in all directions. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, heart pounding like a jackhammer. The room dulled, and the once vibrant colors morphed into an oppressive gray as shadows poured through the threshold. "Mommy!" Lily screamed, eyes wide as she clutched Ethan tightly. The shape that stepped into their sanctuary was no longer human. It had his face, twisted into a grotesque semblance of familiarity. Hollow eyes glowed with an unnatural light, a hollow echo of laughter spilling from its lips, infecting her senses with despair. No longer was this figure the man she loved, it was a mockery of him, something far more sinister. "Let them come to me, Sarah," the thing cooed, invoking a chill that ran through the marrow of her bones. "I've come back for my children." Its voice twisted in the air like a serpent, slithering around her heart. "Stay away," Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony. She instinctively stepped backward, her body instinctively urging her to retreat, but there was no backing down. Her children needed her. The entity glided closer, moving with predatory grace, and the shadows that trailed it thickened like oil. Why don't you let them decide, After all, they've missed me. Get back. She screamed, pushing the kids toward the corner of the room, the little space feeling inadequate, swallowed by the abyss that loomed before them. Mommy! Ethan cried, his small fingers trembling while he pressed himself against his sister. The wraith, her husband, her children's father in form but not in essence, tilted its head, the movement impossibly fluid. You think you can keep them from me? It laughed, this sound a hollow imitation of joy that sent shockwaves of horror through Sarah's soul. No. You're not him. She screamed, feeling the hysteria clawing at the edges of her mind. You're a monster. Am I? It said, voice dripping like poison. What if I told you that the darkness came from your own doing? What if I told you that this isn't my return, but your invitation? The words sunk deep into her psyche, twisting like tendrils of fear. Sarah felt the weight of them, and they spun tales of culpability. Had she, in her grief, invited something into their lives? Had her longing been the anchor that tethered this abomination to their home? Mommy! Lily pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Please don't let him take us. Sarah felt the tremor in her resolve. She glanced around the room, searching for anything that could serve as a weapon. Her eyes fell on the small, wooden rocking chair, remnants of happier days. It seemed far too small against the looming darkness. But it was a connection to life, to love. Stay behind me. She ordered fiercely, as if that alone could shield them from the malevolence. She picked up the chair and brandished it like a sword. Futile, dear Sarah, the creature taunted, inching closer. You only prolong the inevitable. The shadows intensified, swirling like a storm. An icy breeze whipped through the air, closely followed by a deafening howl that threatened to deafen her. In that instant, the light flickered, a stuttering heartbeat managed to break through the suffocating veil of darkness. Lily, Ethan. She shouted over the chaos. Hold my hand. Her voice roared through the void. If love, no matter how fragmented, could pierce this shadow, she would do everything in her power to protect her children. Just as they interlocked fingers, the laughter turned into a cacophony of rage, and the figure lunged forward, teeth flashing like daggers in the darkness. What would happen in this last stand against the encroaching horror? Seconds bled into eternity, and as the shadows closed in, Sarah felt the icy grip of despair. With a desperate heart, she shouted one final plea into the abyss. What do you want from us? And behind her, she heard an answer that would shatter the last illusion of safety, a whisper that promised everything would change, forever. What lay beyond the veil, waiting? Would it be salvation or damnation? The shadows lunged, and Sarah braced herself for the inevitable impact. The rocking chair felt insubstantial in her grip, but she thrust it forward, hoping for some kind of divine intervention. Get away from us. She screamed, her voice cracking as the words ripped from her throat. The chair connected with the wraith's chest, but it passed right through as if it were cloud. The laughter didn't stop. In that moment, time froze. Lily and Ethan were practically glued to her side, their wide eyes mirroring her terror. A shroud of darkness coiled around them, a living entity, and Sarah could feel it settling like lead on her chest. Children, the creature chuckled softly, how I've missed you. Fingers gripped Sarah's heart like a vice. She could only think to pull her kids closer. The coldness crept up her arms, turning her fingers numb, but she wouldn't let them go. You're not their father. She shouted, even as doubt gnawed at her resolve. You never were. With each insidious word, the laughter swelled, filling the space around them, pricking at her mind. She turned her gaze desperately around, searching for an escape, a crack in the cursed reality that had engulfed them. But the walls felt like a cage. Just as she began to lose hope, she heard a faint whisper, a little voice cutting through the chaos. Mommy, help! It was Ethan, his courage crumbling as he squeezed her hand tighter. The sound stirred something primal in her, a flicker of determination ignited by her children's need. Listen to me. Sarah yelled, her eyes burning with the intensity of her emotions. "We stand together. No matter what you are, you will not take my children." She could feel her voice rattle in the air, a spell against the dreary darkness. But the moment was fragile, and she could sense the wraith recoiling just slightly from her declaration. "It wasn't enough. Stubborn, aren't you?" The thing hissed, each word through its twisted jaw seemed to drip with malice. "You've painted this portrait of suffering, and I am the artist come to complete my work. They belong with me forever." The air vibrated with its proclamation, and the shadows thickened, spiraling like smoke caught in a tempest. Sarah knew she had to act quickly. The moment felt ripe with choices, but only one stood out: the rocking chair, infused with memories, had to be used differently. "Hold on, tight," she shouted, her voice breaking the suffocating silence. She swung the chair, not at the creature, but instead into the air above them, toward the shadows. As the wood connected with the ethereal void, a shockwave shot through the air. A blinding light erupted, emanating from where the chair struck, bursting the shadow into fragments that sizzled and shrieked. "Mommy!" Lily's voice rang out in delight, but Sarah felt confusion creep back in. This light, it was both beautiful and horrifying, illuminating faces twisted with anguish and longing. Faces of those who had been taken. "Run!" she screamed. But the wraith bellowed in fury, its laughter morphing into a screech that rattled the very bones of the house. The shadows unfurled like angry flames, tendrils reaching for them, and Sarah felt choking dread settle once more. Just when hope seemed to fade, a newfound presence bolted from the light. A shadow amongst shadows, an otherworldly form. "You cannot escape your fate, Sarah. You bind them here with your own fear." "No." She felt the power of the light surge within her. "You will not take them." The figure lunged again, but this time Sarah met it with resolve, channeling every ounce of love and defiance. The shadows shook and writhed, trying to pull her in. "Mommy!" came the plaintive cry, more desperate now. Suddenly, a deafening sound shattered the room. A window imploded, splintering wood raining down as daylight flooded the space. It illuminated every corner, every lingering face of despair. "Run toward the light," she urged, as panic filled her eyes. The entity began to dissolve, but so did the precious moment of clarity she'd fought for. What awaited them on the other side of those shattered windows? Hope or an even deeper darkness? As she sprinted forward, she could hear the whisper again, deeper this time, curling up like smoke in her mind. "You have awakened them." The air crackled with ominous energy, and as they rushed through the threshold, she felt a chilling grip wrapping around her ankle. Was it the end, or just the beginning? The light enveloped Sarah and her children, a temporary haven tearing them from the grip of shadow. But as they tumbled into the sunlight, the warmth felt deceiving, as if something malicious still lingered at the edges of their vision. They hit the ground, hard, and Sarah instinctively turned, bracing herself against whatever might come next. "Stay close," she gasped, panting as she scanned the surroundings, heart racing. The remnants of their former world felt altered, colors washed out, the air too still. It had transformed, a mockery of the home they once knew. Flashes of their family room became detailed with unsettling clarity, yet the serenity was tainted by the dread that crawled back up her spine. "Is it gone?" Ethan's voice trembled, his eyes darting about like a frightened rabbit. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, glancing behind them. The shattered window loomed like a jagged maw. "We have to keep moving." They stumbled through the living room, the atmosphere thick with dread. The walls felt as though they were breathing, closing in, anticipation thick as fog. The lack of sound amplified every creak, every whisper of the wind that seemed almost alive with malign intent. Just ahead, an unsettling shadow blurred, gliding across the wall, a twitch in her vision. Sarah hesitated, identifying it only in the periphery, but the instinct to protect her children forced her forward. "Let us go to the kitchen. We need to find something." The children followed, but as they crossed the threshold into the kitchen, the door slammed shut behind them. They all jolted at the sound, panic tearing into the recesses of Sarah's mind like a wild animal. "Mommy!" Lily cried, her little hand reaching for Sarah desperately. It's okay, it's okay. Sarah promised, her voice quaking, but she could hardly convince herself. The room felt wrong, the fluorescent lights flickering chaotically as shadows darted across the walls. As she tried to pull open the door, it wouldn't budge. A force was holding it shut. She could feel the weight of the darkness pressing against her chest again, like a constellation of icy hands pressing in from every side. "Mommy, what's happening?" Ethan whispered, and Sarah swallowed hard as she turned to him. His innocence tore at her heart. "Just stay back," she urged softly, even while a flicker of doubt wormed its way into her thoughts. When did it stop being just the shadows? When did it become something far worse? "I have to try something." With suddenly renewed strength, she grabbed the rolling pin from the counter, its surface familiar and grounded. "If we're going to get out of here, we have to fight." "Fight what?" Lily asked, eyes wide. "The darkness," Sarah shouted, gripping the rolling pin like a lifeline. "Whatever is in here with us." With no further warning, the lights flickered violently, casting strange shadows across the room. The cupboard doors rattled like a symphony of horror, resonating with the sinister laughter that echoed through the kitchen. "Children!" An unfamiliar voice called out, twisting in the shadows. It was deep, smooth, and cut through the air like ice. "Delightful little creatures you are, you don't yet know the full extent of your powers." "Who are you?" Sarah shouted, her heart thumping wildly, every instinct screaming for her to protect her kids. "I am the answer to the questions you fear to ask," the voice intoned decorously, but with a sinister twist. "A gatekeeper to truths you cannot comprehend." "Enough. Leave us alone," Sarah yelled. The room began to pulse, shadows coiling tighter around her, swirling dangerously near her children. "You've awakened me, dear Sarah, but letting go is the hardest part. Just wait and watch as the shroud lifts." A wave of blackness surged towards Sarah, and instinctively, she swung the rolling pin with all her might. It shattered the heavy air, splintering the shadows like shards of glass. But for every action, the darkness responded, walls bending and elongating, mocking her resistance. A new figure loomed, faint but undeniable, its hollow eyes fixated on her, promising dread unknown. "Mommy!" They screamed in unison, and Sarah felt their fear lash around her, wrapping tighter than the shadows, igniting every protective instinct inside her. What was emerging with each layer of darkness unfurling? What windows to their fate was she unknowingly opening? The wraith twitched, as if delighting in her turmoil, and panic surged anew through Sarah's veins. The question echoed in her mind: this was just the beginning, but of what? The air around them thickened, a palpable smog swirling with the shadows, wrapping tighter with every second. Sarah stood at the center of it, clutching that rolling pin like a talisman. Her breaths came quick and shallow as the darkness sank deeper into the room, fervently feeding on the terror radiating from her. "Mommy, I can't see." Lily sobbed, her small frame trembling as she scrunched against Ethan. Sarah's heart crashed in her chest. "Hold on to each other," she cried, voice raw, desperation clawing at her throat. The voice from the shadows laughed, a sound that coiled around her like barbed wire. "Blinded by fear, dear Sarah, you're only beginning to comprehend your own fragility." What did it mean? She felt a sudden surge of anger. "You'll never have power here." As Sarah clenched her fists tighter around the rolling pin, the shadows shifted. They pulsed, as if breathing, all while whispering her name, seducing her with promises of strength. Demon-like faces twisted through the darkness, flickering in and out of view, each one bearing a twisted grin. "Stop it!" Sarah shouted, swinging wildly against the encroaching nightmare, but shadows ebbed and flowed around her forcefully, constricting her. "Mommy! Ethan, stay back!" she shouted again, swinging. A sharp crack echoed through the kitchen as the rolling pin connected with a cupboard, a dull thud like a heartbeat. It fractured the grip of darkness, sending a ripple of light across the tile. "See how easy it is to break things?" The voice taunted, sounding genuinely amused. Shadows danced whimsically around her children now, outlined against the bright flickering lights, but it felt like a cruel trick. They didn't cheer her on, but instead blurred into figures that showed her fears, their frames collapsing, falling prey to the creeping associations of darkness. "Stop playing with us," Sarah cried, knowing all too well that something unfathomable was at play. They didn't just want to frighten, they wanted to break her spirit. The room shook as the shadows responded, the cabinets rattling with a chaos of pots and pans spilling to the ground. The children screamed, and queerness settled deep within Sarah. She needed a plan. "Look for a way out," she shouted, her voice gaining an urgency of its own, cutting through the oppressive dark. "There must be something here." A pan clattered to the floor, revealing a small window behind the sink partially covered by grime. A beacon, a chance. But as she rushed toward it, shadows lunged, trying to catch her, to drag her back into the suffocating black. "Mommy, don't!" Ethan cried, his voice trembling with raw panic. But Sarah couldn't stop. They needed out. With a deep breath, she faced the darkness, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "I want to let you take them," she yelled. She struck at the closest shadows, feeling the impact singe through her hands. A brief glimmer broke free, illuminating a path. "That won't work," the voice cooed, dangerously close, the shadows swirling like ink spilling from an overturned bottle. "They will always be mine." "Not if I can help it," Sarah gasped, surging toward the window, pulling at the frame. As it creaked open, a gust of wind howled through, ripping apart the darkness momentarily. But something else surged in a new wave of shadows, a more sinister force darting like a quicksilver flash toward her children. "Ethan! Lily!" she cried in horror, breath catching in her throat, heart slamming against her ribs as she charged to protect them. But this time, the darkness moved quicker. "Sweet Sarah," the voice hissed softly, almost lovingly, "you can't protect them forever." Terror clamped down around her lungs. What did it mean? How could it control them all? She had to find a way not just to flee, but to fight. The wraith's hollow gaze locked onto hers, and Sarah felt the foundations of her courage shake. Was there a way to sever whatever bond tied them to this malevolent force? "Help us!" Lily screamed, and Sarah's world narrowed into nothing but resolve. Could even the strength of a mother be enough to save them from this abomination? As she turned back to face the impossible darkness, the air crackled with raw tension. What sacrifices would she have to make to claim their freedom? An unmistakable revelation surged within her. It was now or never. But could she face the truth lurking deeper in the gloom? Would it be her salvation or their damnation? With a deep breath, Sarah took a bold step forward, her eyes wide as they tried to pierce through the swirling darkness. The shadows shimmered and pulsated, their forms shifting in relentless waves. As the new wave bore down, her only thought was to shield her children, to protect them from whatever unholy force sought to claim them. "Stay close," she shouted, rallying her voice against the encroaching dread. With her free hand, she reached for Ethan and Lily, pulling them securely against her waist, their tiny bodies quaking in her embrace. The cold laughter echoed harshly, vibrating through the air like the crack of thunder. "You think you can hold on to them forever?" it mocked, reverberating through her mind. How sweet. How naive. The shadows coiled tighter, the dark forms reaching, claw-like hands barely brushing against her arms, electric and cold. Each touch jarred her, sending shivers racing down her spine. Yet there was fury brewing within her, a defiance igniting her heart. "Leave them alone," Sarah bellowed, raising the rolling pin high, her grip so tight her knuckles whitened. She swung again, striking shadows mercilessly, the sound of splintering darkness echoing in rhythm with her heartbeat. In that brief moment of distraction, a soft, almost pleading voice rang out from the chaos. "Mommy, help us!" Lily's fragile plea cut through the tumult, dragging Sarah's focus back to her children, but there, amidst the dim haze, shadows slithered around them, feasting on the fear in Lily's eyes. Sarah felt the walls of her resolve start to deteriorate. "Ethan, can you see anything?" She shouted, her voice strained. Just darkness and laughing. He whimpered, curling closer to Lily, who still buried her face in Sarah's side. It struck her that even if she broke through, they were all still trapped in an abyss of terror. Strength is born from sacrifice, the voice whispered, coiling like smoke around her thoughts. What would you give to save them? Her mind raced. Sacrifice? What did that even mean in this twisted game of shadows? Was it herself? For a fleeting moment, she considered her own life. The thought sent a shock through her, but then, in just a heartbeat, fear turned to rage. Not a chance, she spat, raising the rolling pin once more, though her hands trembled with the weight of impending doom. You think you can turn me against my own? As if provoked, the shadows surged forward, bearing fangs of darkness that glimmered ominously. In that instant, she realized how much they enjoyed the fear, the confusion it fueled them. She abruptly recalled the tales of those lost to darkness, how fear itself was the chains wrapping around souls. Then it's time to extinguish that fear. She screamed, her heart pounding against her ribcage like thunder. With surprising strength, she hurled the rolling pin toward the thickest clump of shadows, its trajectory glowing for an instant before crashing into the dark mass. The moment it connected, a blinding flash erupted, and for a heartbeat, the darkness shrieked, recoiling as if seared by sunlight. The shriek echoed and reverberated, a sound so painful it cracked through the air, a sign of resistance. But it didn't last. As quickly as it began, the dark mass reformed, more twisted, more insidious, glaring at her with a renewed hunger. Shadowy figures morphed, faces distorting in rage, some reaching out desperately for her, while others loomed over Ethan and Lily, a nightmarish parody of familiarity. Your bravery means nothing, the voice hissed, now closer, the heat of its malevolence washing over her. Every choice you make binds them closer to me. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat again. What choice could she even make that would protect them? Suddenly, her surroundings shifted as loud thuds echoed from above. The ceiling reverberated ominously, dust raining down around them. It's here, she rasped, glancing at Ethan and Lily, who were now clutching each other tightly, eyes wide with fear. Mommy, what's happening? Ethan cried, his voice breaking, fear radiating from him, but just as Sarah turned to reassure them, the floor creaked beneath their feet, a deep groan resonating. The whole house felt as though it were waking up alive and furious. That a piercing howl cut through the room, snapping her attention back to the shadows, which writhed and screamed in collective fury. This was far worse. They were feeling emboldened, and she realized they needed to face whatever was coming. Whatever is in here, we face it together. Sarah's voice cracked with determination. What new horror awaited her from the depths? Was this a beginning or an end? The air thickened once more, a darkened curtain falling hard around them as footsteps echoed above, filling her heart with dread. What awaited them in that overwhelming darkness? She had no answers, only fear that grew like a beast inside her. And that monster was growing hungrier each passing moment. The floor trembled as the darkness roiled with a life of its own, an angry beast writhing around them. Shadows crawled up to Sarah's knees, twisting and coiling, their clutch growing ever tighter. With each horrific growl vibrating through the air, she steeled herself against an encroaching wave of despair. Ethan, Lily, stay close. She shouted, her voice hoarse and raw, but the urgency of the danger propelled her forward. She could feel the children's ominous trembling against her, shuddering with every muffled howl from the depths of despair around them. The dark laughter escalated, a horrifying harmony echoing through the very bones of the house. You think you can save them? You're just meat on my plate. In that moment, the shadows began to shift, forming grotesque figures that resembled her worst fears. A nightmarish version of herself emerged, its eyes cold and hollow, a wicked grin stretching across its face. Embrace the dark, Sarah. Join them. It's far easier than fighting. No. She screamed, shaking her head ferociously. The evil inside her reflection seemed to beam with delight as the shadows fed off her fear. Do you not see? You're losing. The figure taunted, taking a menacing step forward, dripping malice and contempt. With instinct blurring into sheer desperation, Sarah thrust her hand into her pocket, fingers wrapping around the small cross pendant she never took off. "This is not over," she shouted, gripping the charm tightly. She felt heat radiate from it, a flicker of hope igniting against the oppressive darkness. The shadows paused, recoiling as if they had been struck. "What is this?" The voice hissed, confusion flooding its tone, but that confusion turned to fury in the blink of an eye. "You dare challenge me?" The world around them pulsed rhythmically, dark and light in a sinister dance. In a surge of adrenaline, Sarah lifted the pendant high above her head. "You have no hold over us," she yelled, and, powered by her will, she summoned everything she had left: love for her children, memories of laughter, safety, hope. The shadows howled in protest, a terrifying cacophony that made the air feel thicker than molasses. "You will regret this." And just then, as the mass of darkness writhed with rage, the floors above them erupted. The ceiling cracked open as heavy, grotesque claws ripped through wood and plaster, sending debris raining down like glittering sharp rain. "Run!" Sarah screamed, a primal urgency forcing her voice to cut through the chaos. She whipped her body around, propelling them forward toward the only visible escape, an ominous doorway lurking at the end of the hall, framed by darkness yet glimmering faintly. Ethan and Lily moved instinctively with her, feet pounding against the floor, an echo of terror reverberating behind them. With every step, Sarah felt the shadows lash out, but the sensation of the pendant glowing with warmth urged her on, a reprieve against the gnawing fear that threatened to swallow them whole. Almost there. But the shadows retreated only to lunge forward again, now feeling cornered and enraged. Cries filled the space, echoing of desperation. "We take what is ours." "Mommy!" Lily cried, her tiny voice filled with terror, pulling at Sarah's shaking heart. "No!" Sarah shouted, unwilling to succumb to hopelessness. "I'll never let you have them." And then they reached the doorway. Sarah risked a glance back. The darkness surged, a tidal wave of shadows that begged to reclaim them, fingers clawing at the threshold, desperate to pull them back. The horror built in intensity as time slowed. She felt the icy tendrils creep up Sarah's legs, an ominous chill she couldn't ignore. What if the door shut? What if it was a trap? "Go!" She screamed at Ethan and Lily one last time, shoving them forward into the light beyond the door, her heart racing as she risked everything. Then, she felt it, a grip seizing her from behind. The shadows wrapped around her waist, pulling hard, as if time itself held its breath. In that moment of resistance, with terror clawing at her throat and the very essence of darkness threatening to consume her whole, she wondered, was she strong enough to break free? As the room twisted around them, the world faded to a scream. What awaited her as light flickered out like a dying star? Would she truly escape this nightmare, or would darkness be her final chapter? A single thought hung in the air, haunting and raw. What was left to lose? The light engulfed Ethan and Lily as they slipped through the doorway, but it flickered like a dying flame. Sarah felt the shadows tighten around her, claws of despair dragging her backward, deeper into the suffocating void. Bitter cold surged through her. It seeped into her bones, draining her strength with every second. "Mommy!" was the last echo she heard from her children, their little voices fading into silence, snatched away by the insatiable dark. Panic surged, snapping her resolve like a brittle twig. She struggled, every nerve in her body screaming for escape. "No!" she gasped, her voice a mere whisper now, desperate but drowned out by the mounting fury of the shadows. A heavy weight pressed down around her, forming a cocoon of darkness that thrummed with malice. She fought against the shroud, clawing at the air, searching for something solid to grip. In that moment, the shadows coiled tighter, and she felt them reach inside her, to the very core of her being, unearthing buried fears. The agonizing realization hit: she wasn't just fighting for her children, she was battling the very ugliness within her soul. What if she fell? What if despair swallowed her whole? The voice danced mockingly in her mind. "You see? You've lost already." But the pendant, it pulsed in her pocket like a heartbeat, a reminder of the glimmer of hope she had fought for. With a fierce cry, she yanked it free, letting its warmth seep into her trembling hand. "Get away from me!" She hurled the pendant toward the shadows, and it glowed brilliantly, scattering dark wisps like fireflies disrupted at night. The shadows recoiled, retreating momentarily, but it was not enough. Sarah felt their grasp tighten again, a cold serpent curling around her waist, carrying her deeper into the nightmare. With sheer will, she launched herself toward the doorway, back into the light. She could still sense its flicker, a beacon amidst the chaos, yet, the floor beneath her quaked violently, refusing to let her go. She staggered, arms flailing, and the shadows howled in triumph. You think light can save you? You have to embrace the darkness, Sarah. It's already a part of you. A thunderous rumble echoed through the shattered sepulchre, shaking the very foundation of reality. Splintered would rain down like meteors, but Sarah couldn't stop. She pressed forward regardless, the light inching away but beckoning her fiercely. Not yet. With a final, desperate leap, she threw herself at the doorway, ripping free from their grasp. Just as her body collided with the threshold, an electrifying explosion of light enveloped her, bright and blinding. The shadows lashed out, a final, violent attempt to drag her back into their hunger. Sarah gasped as she broke through, tumbling into a new world, a sunlit room full of dust and echoes, yet strangely inviting, but a chilling realization settled like ice in her chest. Where were Ethan and Lily? She twisted around, scanning the shadowy corners of the bright space. Children. Her voice broke, sharp with fear that clawed at her throat. Mommy? A voice trembled, almost too quiet, drifting from the shadows at the edge of the room. It wasn't just any voice, it was both familiar and haunting. Sarah spun, heart pounding, as she caught sight of a figure emerging, illuminated by the dim light. But it wasn't her children. It was her specter, the dark version of her, grinning maliciously from the gloom. Welcome home, Sarah. The horror churned inside her. What did you do? She croaked, desperation flooding her veins. The figure laughed lightly, the sound slicing through the air like a blade. Your fight has only just begun. You've entered my domain now. As reality twisted and the shadows crept closer again, Sarah prepared to confront the truth she never wanted to face. What lay beneath that chilling grin? What had she truly unleashed? The weight of her past loomed, darker than ever. Could she reclaim her children? Or would this shadow consume her completely? The echoes of laughter filled the space as she braced herself. One question reverberated in the depths of her mind: what sacrifices would she make to protect what was left? The darkness loomed all around Sarah, more than an entity. It was a living, breathing nightmare that pulsated with its own sinister energy. Her dark specter smirked at her from the shadows, using her own fears against her, suffocating her spirit beneath the weight of regret and memory. Welcome home, Sarah, it taunted, its voice a warped version of her own, chilling her to the bone. Let them go. She shouted, heart racing, knowing she couldn't lose the fight. You don't own me. The darkness shuddered, the laughter surrounding her like a suffocating fog. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard her children's voices, faint whispers cutting through the madness. Mommy helped, straining to focus. Sarah clawed at the edges of her own heart, summoning every glimmer of hope she retained. I will not give in. Not now. With gritted teeth, she took a step forward, ignoring the way shadows reached for her with icy fingers, their coldness trying to creep into her mind. I am not afraid of you. You are a part of me, but I control the light. To her disbelief, as she uttered those words, a spark ignited within the pendant, emboldened by her defiance. No. The specter recoiled as if burned, eyes narrowing with a mix of rage and consternation. You think those petty words can save you? You can't escape this. Without hesitation, Sarah dug deeper, pulling forth every memory filled with brightness, the laughter of her children, the warmth of their hugs, the sunshine-filled afternoons spent together. Each moment fed the light, strengthened her resolve. She could feel her love radiating, a beacon against the dark. Ethan. Lily. She called out, her voice carrying not only through the room but through the very fibers of the darkness, like a battle cry that shook its foundation. I will find you, I promise. Adding to her defiance, Sarah thrust the pendant ahead of her, its glow pulsing brighter with each heartbeat. You will not take away what I love. The shadows hissed, swirling violently, shrieking like banshees threatened by the sun. Then, as if in response to her determination, a faint whimpering broke through the suffocating silence, the sweet, terrified voice of her son. We're scared, Mommy. That plea shattered something deep inside her. She couldn't let the shadows twist that fear. Stay close. I'm coming for you. The specter recoiled, but Sarah surged forward again, confidence pooling within her. As she moved, the shadows began to splinter as if the fog of darkness was fraying. Was it possible, she thought, that love could do this? Just as she pushed through the reeling shadows, overcoming the weight that pressed down around her, she saw them, her children, frightened and small, trapped within the swirling darkness. Mommy! They cried, reaching for her, the light around them flickering like a dying ember. Hold on. She dashed towards them, the terror gripping her, coursing through her veins. The shadows fought back, wrapping like vines. But fear shook off like a winter chill when the warmth of their love engulfed her. Together. She shouted, pulling Ethan and Lily safely to her side, feeling the warmth and unwavering hope ignite. We can do this together. In that moment, the darkness shrieked, a howling that surrounded them like a blizzard, but Sarah's heart raced with raw, unheeded light. I am not afraid. I am their mother. Raising the pendant high, she let the light burst free. It was a blinding explosion of warmth and brilliance that cut through the darkness, splitting it apart like morning snow beneath a sunbeam. She felt the shadows recoil, scream dispersing like wisps of smoke beneath her force. Ethan and Lily huddled close, eyes wide, shining with the reflected warmth of her light. We're safe, they gasped, disbelief painted across their astonished faces, but Sarah could sense the specter's rage simmering. This is not over, Sarah. It screeched, the dark form writhing, coiling in defiance. You can never fully escape what's inside you. Each word sent a chill through her, but she steadied her breath, glowing with love that would always shield her. Sarah would not let the darkness define their story. No, she breathed, determination swirling with the light. You are a reminder of what I must protect, but this is our home, and we are stronger together. You will not take us. With a final burst of energy, she released the pendant's power, and in that moment, she understood its essence. It was both love and sacrifice, binding the family they had fought to reclaim. Light erupted in a radiant wave, obliterating the shadows completely, forcing them to dissolve into mere strands of darkness. The laughter and whispers faded into silence, and as the brilliance engulfed them, Sarah felt a deep peace settle over her. They were freed. As light cascaded around the room and the shadows' last gases fled, the familiar sounds of home returned. Lily and Ethan blinked against the brightness, and Sarah gathered them closer, her heart still racing. The power of their love flickered in the air, charged yet calming, as they embraced in the sanctuary of safety they had fought so hard to reclaim. Mommy, are we safe? Lily whispered, lifting her gaze, eyes glimmering with a mix of fear and hope. With a tender smile, Sarah cupped her children's cheeks in her hands. Yes, love. We're safe. Together, we will always be safe. A soft light filled the room, not just outside but inside them. The shadows were gone, but their memory would remain a bittersweet reminder of their fight. As they stood in their sunlit home, Sarah realized that brightness wasn't just in the ordinary. It could thrum in their hearts, protecting them from the darkness that would always linger around the edges. And as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Let us make more happy memories, Sarah said, all at once feeling the weight of burdens lifted. Yes. Ethan and Lily exclaimed, grinning wide, and together they stepped forward into a future filled with light. Just then, the faintest whisper floated through the air, lingering like mist, echoing, "You cannot keep them forever." With strength coursing through her heart, Sarah turned the thought away. For now, they were home, and that was enough. Only it wasn't the end. You need to subscribe now to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that await you. Smash that like button now, and feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters. This is the moment to show it.